Hello, sports fans, and welcome to the podcast that currently is trending throughout all of southeastern North Dakota and the tri-state area of Upper Alberta. It's the Engel Angle with Fort Worth Star-Telegram columnist Mac Engel, whose week started smashingly when he ran out of gas after dropping his kid off at school. Yeah, that really happened. And I do feel shame. I was that guy who was holding up traffic because I didn't fully appreciate what E meant on the car that I am currently driving, which is a Ferrari that looks a lot like a Toyota Highlander, pre-owned, which is a cute way of saying I drive a used station wagon. All of these people out there driving these massive 18-wheel SUVs so you can haul around your 2.1 kids and junk that you don't need. Yeah, you're not driving a truck. You're driving a van. That's what an SUV is. It's today's version of a van. And the Highlander, or whatever the hell it is what I drive, yeah, it's a station wagon. That's what it is. This is just another example of why America marketing is the best on the planet. The auto industry has convinced a bunch of stay-at-home moms and dads who yearn to live on a ranch in Montana so they can be on Yellowstone that the SUV is cool and it's all hip, when in fact it is a silent synonym for van, which means you're done. How many vans do you see on the road today? 2, 5, 10? How many station wagons do you see on the road today? 3? And when you see that station wagon or that van pull up or in a parking lot someplace, the last thing you do is pull into the same parking lot. When you see that station wagon coming into your driveway, what you want to do is call the cops, because you know the guys driving those cars, yeah, they're either on work release or they're registered sex offenders. So if you're driving the Ford Everest or the Chevy Gobi Desert, just know what you're really driving is a van, or potentially worse, a minivan. So if you're buying the midsize Mongolian Manchurian steppe, what you're really driving is a station wagon. So when you're shopping for cars, just know this. The single most important element to driving the new age van or station wagon remains not miles per gallon or even the cost of the car, but knowing exactly what E means for that car. Because you don't want to be the guy running up the hill in the rain, in flip-flops, searching for a gas station so you can buy a gas can because his station wagon just ran out of gas. That's my little car rant. You can use that to impress your friends or get girls. Okay, now like all of my guests on the Engel Angle, this guest needs no introduction, but for my listeners in South America, I'm going to do it for you because I care. This guest is currently one of the best sports journalists going these days, and he is the standard. He's the standard for people brave enough to get into sports writing or writing in general. He has a deep passion for journalism and the craft of writing. He became a bit of a name while writing for Sports Illustrated more than 20 years ago, and he has since moved on to become one of the greatest sports book authors going today. He is the best-selling author of some of the best sports books in the last 20 years. He wrote Three Ring Circus, the definitive tell-all about the LA Lakers dynasty years with Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant. He wrote Football for a Buck, a fantastic read about the USFL under the direction of Donald Trump. He wrote Boys Will Be Boys about the 1990s era Dallas Cowboys. And he wrote several other best-selling sports books as well. He also does a terrific podcast titled Two Writers Slinging Yang, which he was so kind to have me on as a guest one time. He also has a new book coming out this fall on Bo Jackson. And right now, he is in the now. He's hot. He's current. Because of the book he wrote called Showtime, about the rise of the dynasty era Los Angeles Lakers. That book is the inspiration for the new HBO series titled Winning Time. You can find him at jeffpearlman.com. He is the best of the best, Sir Jeff Pearlman.
Hey, Mac. How's it going?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm okay, but my dog keeps throwing up and diarrheaing everywhere.
That's a good day. What did you give it?
No, she's been doing this for a while. I'm freaking taking her to the vet today. It's just very annoying.
Which part of it's more annoying? Like the fact that she's throwing up and has diarrhea, or are you going to have to spend $250 at the vet?
More, I'm just like worried about her. It's like, I don't know. I kind of love this dog.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. I know, because you feel helpless, don't you? Like,
yeah, and they don't tell you. They're just always happy. Like they throw up in their back going like, hey, so anyway.
What kind of dog is it?
She's a little like poodle kind of dog. She's like,
that sucks.
If you saw her, you'd want to kick her. Yeah, anyway. Such life.
So are you enjoying, I follow you on Twitter, obviously. It seems to me that you are really enjoying Winning Time and all of the praise that it is getting. Are you basking in this? I hope you are.
I am. I'm definitely ready for it to be over. Kind of ready to move back to, normalcy and not talking about it. But yeah, I mean, it was really fun. Like it was a fun week and a half of like the parties and stuff like that. It was really cool. But I don't know. It's like getting praise for something that you did, but you didn't really do. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and I didn't know how you felt about that. Like this is yours, but it's yours. It's your idea,
kind of.
But it wasn't yours. Like what we see on screen is obviously not yours. Is that sort of a weird thing to sort of say, well, yeah, thank you, but.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. I just always, so yeah, sorry, my dog met a neighbor dog. Yeah, I don't know. It's like people keep saying like, oh, I saw your show. And I'm like, it's not really my show. Like it's based on my book and they let me be involved, but not super, it's not my show. So I don't know. Yeah.
Well, you kind of wear your heart on Twitter.
Mm-hmm. That is true.
It does seem to
Sometimes.
me that Jeff, you're pretty candid on Twitter about things. I think it's kind of endearing because it's bold, especially with as many people who follow you. But if you had not been happy with the show, would you have said anything?
Wait, are you recording me? Are we
tell you what, if you don't want this recorded.
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm fine.
I was like,
I just wasn't sure. Would I've said something? If I didn't like the show.
Would you have just been quiet?
Yeah, I'm not going to. I mean, I know they all worked really hard on it, so I wouldn't, but I would be, if I didn't like it, I would just be kind of keep it to myself. I certainly wouldn't bash it. Why would I bash it? It wouldn't make any sense, but I wouldn't be praising it. Yeah.
You have written a number of best-selling books, a lot. And of course, for people who might be listening to this, they'd be familiar with Boys Will Be Boys, the one on the dynasty Dallas Cowboys teams of the 90s. So you've been a part of this process of a best-selling book, and it's doing really well. And now you are part of a television show that's just out, and it's doing well.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between the two and the hype and the reaction? Is it night and day?
Yeah. Well, I mean, nobody throws a huge party. Like when a book comes out, in fact, my wife is always like, you should have a book party. And I never do it because I don't, because I grew up a neurotic Jewish guy in upstate New York. And they were like, when I was raised by neurotic Jewish parents, it's a thing if you don't know. And like our neuroses says you're never allowed to celebrate anything because you might doom it. Right? It's just a thing. It really is. I swear to God, it's a Northeastern Jewish thing that we have where if you praise something too much or you get too excited, you're destined to fail, which is so stupid, but that's how we are. So with books, I promote the hell out of it, but I don't say, look at me. And then when a show comes out, it's all look at me. I mean, the whole thing is look at me. And there's literally the carpet was purple, but there's a red carpet you walk down to say, look at me. And in fact, when I went to the premiere party, I told the one of the HBO people, said, all right, so are you ready to walk down the carpet? And I was like, I'm not walking down the carpet. And then some other writer, the writer, Jim Hecht, who came up with the idea, he's like, Jeff, we're walking the carpet together. And, you know, it's like a mortifyingly embarrassing couple of minutes because it's just not like a normal thing. I don't know. It's a different world. It's a totally different world. In fact, my literary agent said to me, he said, I don't know what word he used, but it was like, have you been enticed yet? Like, have you been corrupted basically by it? Because it is like a very enticing world, and you can see how people get addicted to like the love and the adulation and the applause and like the parties, and everyone loves everyone and everyone's, you're the best. No, you're the best. You know, it's like that kind of world. And when you're a writer, I mean, we don't get that stuff. No way ever. If anything, people just tell us we suck. So I don't know. That's my tangent. It's a drastically different experience.
Go back to your book. I'm going to ask you this because I've talked to other authors before, but I don't know if I've ever had a conversation where I've been able to ask this question. How does a book get made into a movie, or in this case, a TV series? What is that process? How is that process?
It's very long. It takes forever. I had a guy. So basically, your book gets optioned. So someone comes along. In this case, it was Jim Hecht, who's a screenwriter, and he had read the book, and I guess he was a diehard Laker fan who really felt something with the book. And he came to my house years ago, 2014, and said that he wanted to option the book, meaning he would sort of acquire the rights to it and then write a treatment, like a proposal and maybe a screenplay, and then shop it around. So usually if you're smart, in my shoes, you charge someone for that. But I was an idiot. I didn't charge him. I just let him. I was like, all right. I mean, it worked out. So obviously I wasn't that big of an idiot, but I basically gave it to him to toy with. And for years he would call me and say like, this is going great. And we have this meeting and this and this. And I never believed him. Not because he was insincere. I just think the whole business is insincere. And so it would always be like, Will Smith blank, and so meeting with this so-and-so, and this guy knows so-and-so. And I never really believed it. Also, Jim, he didn't have any resume in sports. He'd written Ice Age 2, The Meltdown. Like that was his big credit. So I didn't have any reason to think any of this was happening. And then he called me one day, maybe 4 years ago, and he's like, Adam McKay wants to meet with us. It's a big deal. Adam McKay wants to meet with us. And I didn't know who Adam McKay was. I had no idea. So I just Googled Adam McKay and saw he's done a ton of movies, and we went to his house, and he said he loved the book. And I left and I thought, well, this probably still isn't going to happen, but that was cool. And then maybe a year later, I get contracts from HBO, and my agent, I had an agent to negotiate this stuff. My agent said, HBO is really interested and they want to lock down the book. Okay. I still didn't really believe anything. And then maybe like 3 years ago, I saw a friend of mine, a former colleague of mine at the student newspaper, actually at Delaware, sent me a link to an article about the show casting Adrian Brody. HBO cast Adrian Brody, an upcoming Laker docuseries or whatever, dramatic series. And that was the first time I thought, wow, that's kind of weird. And then when they cast Sally Field is when I really thought it was weird. And then before you know it, they're making this stupid show. So who knows? It's not a stupid show. Just in my head, I always reduce everything as stupid.
Well, you've seen 1,000 times, Jeff, that you've got this great sports story and Hollywood's drooling over it, and they make it into a movie and it sucks. Yeah. We've seen that 1,000 times, right? Because
quite a few.
Yeah, we've seen it because it's such a hard genre to nail and to make look like a sporting event. Because the actors just don't look like a 6'5" guy or whatever. And now we're talking about Magic Johnson, who's 6'8", and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who's 7 feet. And because of that, did you have any reservations where you thought there's no way that they can make a TV series or a movie about an NBA team worth any good?
I mean, I could give the BS answer and be like, I thought about that at length, but I really like once they were making it, I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. This is great. They're making it. And I just kind of trust I just sort of assumed they knew what they were talking about. Like they had all these experienced heavyweights getting involved in it. I mean, I do agree with you. The movies that screwed up really badly. And it is hard to capture. It's really interesting. Like if you ever, like I play a lot of, I probably played 10,000 games of basketball in my life. And if you asked me to play an NBA player, like we want you just to physically to be an NBA player, it would be ridiculous. Like you could see, I don't have the motions. I don't have the movements. I don't have the, there's something about being an athlete and the way an athlete walks and the way an athlete moves and the way an athlete sort of oozes that athleticism that normal people don't have. It's like I've played games against even just Division I players, good Division I players.
It's a different world.
And it's so ridiculous. I remember one time in college playing, I went to Delaware and there was a point guard. There had been a point guard there named Torrance Chisholm, Delaware point guard, like nothing amazing. And I remember he once was like, I'm just not going to let you touch the ball. And that was it for me. I never touched the ball. Like it's just a different level of everything. So it's incredibly, incredibly hard. And I think one thing this show does that's smart is they use, they got a lot of doubles and you can't tell, like they film it really wisely, but there are a lot of guys. I know the Quincy Isaiah who plays Magic, he has a double. And I think he played at Mississippi Valley State, but he was a legit Division I player who is, I think, 6'8" or 6'9", and is now playing overseas. So when you watch the basketball, it actually looks really, really good because it's not just a bunch of short actors pretending to be tall. And also the guy who plays Kareem, Solomon Hughes, he was a center at Cal.
Oh, okay.
And he played for the Globetrotters and he played in Europe a bit. So the guy was a legit basketball player.
Series creator Adam McKay put you in the show. And I'm following you on Twitter and I'm seeing the shots of you dressed up and you're in the scenes and all that. So Jeff, one thing I always hear is how long it takes to shoot a movie or a scene, and the lighting and it's set up and it takes forever. You've done it now. You're the actor. You're Meryl Streep. Yeah. Does it really take that long? And if so, why does it take that damn long?
It's funny. Our scene didn't take that long. My wife was in it and we shot. It was basically over a day. I remember years ago doing a story for TV Guide. It's the only story I think I ever did for TV Guide. I don't even know if TV Guide still exists. Probably not. But I did a story for TV Guide about a TV show called Love Monkey. And it was short-lived, I know. It starred Tom Cavanaugh and like Trey Lorenz and Jason Priestley was in the show from 90210. And I'm watching them film the show. And basically, I was there for a couple hours, and they filmed the same scene. I think it was like 28 times, like something ridiculous. Now we need to do it from this angle. Let's do it from this angle. Okay, Jason, this time when you hold the coffee cup, hold it up a little higher. All right, this time let's not hold up the coffee cup at all. And at the end of it, I went up to Jason Priestley, and I was like, that wasn't as exciting as I thought it would be. And he goes, brother, you have no idea. And it's really funny. Like, it really is funny. The glamour of Hollywood is in the partying and the good looking people and, a million people watching your show on TV and having a premiere. Like that's the glamour of it all. And it's pretty seductive, but like the actual work is, I watched them film some of the basketball scenes today. So, I mean, not today, when they were filming, I forgot what season it was, but they were filming one of the scenes of the Lakers in a win. And it was Magic Johnson high-fiving Kareem. And, on the screen, it looks amazing. And it's like all these fans are cheering and the high five and blah, blah, blah. And it feels like you're watching a Laker game. But when you watch them film it, it's just a repetitive high five and the guy saying action and all the fans cheering and then cut and everyone stops cheering and then action and everyone stops cheering and then cut and everyone stops cheering. It's not super exciting, it's kind of drudgery actually.
I want to move this subject or this conversation to a different subject, which is your new book. It's not out yet. I don't think it's out yet. You're writing a book about Bo Jackson.
Correct.
When's that going to come out, Jeff?
That's out in October.
Out in October. Okay. So I saw the 30 for 30 on him.
Yeah.
And I think it was either George Brett or maybe it was Boomer Esiason. They said if Bo Jackson played today, that people would say he's a steroid guy. Now, Bo Jackson played in the 80s when the steroid thing was just knocking on the door of working its way into Major League Baseball clubhouses. It was already in the NFL. Jeff, do you think because I kind of think he was. I'll never be able to prove it. I'm sure people will hate me for saying it. I got to tell you, there's a part of me that thinks Bo Jackson was a steroid guy. Do you?
I do not.
All right.
I don't.
All right.
And I would say if I did,
I know.
really
that's why
don't.
I asked you. I was like, he'll be honest.
Well, the reason I don't is because the freaky athleticism really dates back to high school at McAdory High. And he was a poor kid at this, a kind of suburb of Birmingham high school. He certainly wasn't doing steroids in high school. And he just showed up at Auburn as this absolute freak. Like, he just was a freak. He always was a freak. He was the absolute athletic freak of nature. And this is not a proof or not proof. I mean, the guy, like, he's a senior in high school. He wins the state decathlon. He hates running the mile so much that he just decides, I'm going to be so many points ahead that I won't have to run the mile. The mile's the last event. I'm just not going to run it. Right. So
he skipped the whole event.
He skipped the whole, he won the state decathlon. And if you looked in the papers the next day, you thought, oh, that was close because you're looking at the point totals. It was only close because he didn't run the mile and he still won the state decathlon. And here's the crazy thing. The next day so it's a 2-day decathlon. He wins it. It's an exhausting experience for any sane human being. The next day, the baseball team, McAdory's baseball team, is playing in a state playoff game. They need a pitcher because they use an arm in the first game. Bo Jackson hasn't pitched at all that year. He hates pitching, and they ask him to pitch this game. He pitches. He strikes out 15 in a one-hitter the day after winning the decathlon. Like, the guy was just a freaking freak of nature, unlike any we've ever seen. So, like, is it possible he used steroids? Sure. I mean, anything's possible, but I don't. I've researched the guy for 2 years, and it never came up, and no one ever there were no suspicions or no. And also, the other thing about him that's really interesting, and it's kind of unique to him, I think to use steroids, you really have to care. Like, I think you really have to care. Like like Barry Bonds used steroids because he desperately wanted to be great, and he saw people passing him by. Same with Clemens. I don't think Bo Jackson ever cared that much. Like, when he was hurt and he was done, he was like, okay, I guess I'm done. Like, he didn't like hold on too long. He wanted to come back to see if he could do it. He kind of did it. Then he was like, all right, I guess I'm good. And like, he doesn't care if he's in the Hall of Fame. He doesn't bother him. He doesn't talk about his legacy. I just don't think he cares enough to start injecting stuff in his body like that. I really don't.
Well, speaking of somebody who cares, you wrote the book on the Shaq and Kobe Bryant Lakers 3-ring circus, which was really fun. And that was when I met you, actually. You had always been someone I had looked up to and respected from afar. And you don't just interview 5 people. You interview 5,500 people. And
wow.
It's what separate. No, it does. I've seen that.
That might be a stretch, though. I don't know if I've interviewed 5,500 people.
It was no different than Sebastian Younger, the guy who wrote The Perfect Storm. Sebastian is great, and he interviews everybody. And I'm like, how does he? And I'm sitting there one time following you on Twitter because I've written a couple of books where I thought I interviewed a lot of guys, Jeff, and I'm like, how the fuck does this guy get everybody? So there's one.
I just have no life.
Well, it's your job, and you're good at it. But there's one story I didn't ask you because you kind of referenced it on Twitter, where you interviewed J.R. Ryder. J.R. is crazy, but you know he's good if you can get him. Can you share your story with me about how you got J.R. Ryder to talk to you?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite stories, actually. I had an address for him, but I did not have a phone number. Yeah, I had an address. I didn't have a phone number. He was living in Arizona. I was going to be in Arizona for some event. I was working on this book, and I thought I'm going to just go knock on his door. So I've knocked on doors before, and I'm kind of a fan of it in the way. I can't. It's really electrifying. Like, knocking on a stranger's door is electrifying. It's terrifying, but it's also electrifying. So I drive out to his house, and for some reason I got there like 9:30 in the morning, which is definitely way too early to knock on a door, but I did. And I knock on the door, and a kid answers, and I'm like, "Hey, is J.R. Ryder here?" He's like, "Hold on." Then a woman comes to the door and she's like, "Can I help you?" And I'm like, "Hey, I'm looking for J.R. Ryder. My name is Jeff Pearlman. I'm a writer." And she goes, "Hold on." And then she closes the door and I hear her like kind of arguing with a man. And I'm thinking, oh no. And J.R. Ryder comes to the door and he goes, "Who are you?" And I had a copy of a book I'd written about the USFL with me. You always bring a book. And I had a copy of the book. I was like, "Hey, my name's Jeff Pearlman. I'm working on a book. I'm a writer, blah, 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 blah." He goes, "Nah, man. Nuh-uh. No. Dude, you don't just show up at someone's house, bro, man. No." And he's not happy. He's clearly not happy. And bro, listen, you don't just do this. Are you effing kidding me? You just show up are you, what? Like, you kidding me? And he's increasingly angry. And, J.R. Ryder definitely has a reputation of being a little erratic. And he opens the door and he's like, "Bro, man, I don't know, man. No." Then he goes, "What's that book you got?" And I go, "Oh, it's a book I wrote about an old football league called the USFL." He's like, "Is that the book? Is that the Trump League?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Huh. Yeah, man, but you just don't come up to someone's door. You don't do it. So what are you working on?" I'm like, "I'm doing a book about the Shaq Kobe years." He's like, "Huh. Those are some interesting times." I was like, "I know. I just wanted to talk to you because, blah, blah." It's like, "All right, man, I'll talk to you." And, giving me 2 hours via phone. He gave me his number. He said, "I can't talk now, but here's my number. Give me a call." I ended up talking for 2 hours.
I'm impressed you did not just turn around and hightail it out of there. What gave you the stones to sit there and hang tight and talk him through his hesitation? Because that's not easy.
So the funny thing is, like, people hear these stories and they think, "Whoa, that's really brave." But the truth of the matter is, you're always terrified. It's actually not brave. You're terrified. I was terrified, right? I was very nervous. I get nervous every time I knock on a door. I'm not brave. It's like, you just learn to walk through your fear. Like, that's all it is. It's like walking through your fear. It's saying, like, I know this is going to suck. I know this isn't going to be fun. I know someone's going to get mad at me probably. It could be really ugly. But I'm just going to walk through my fear and do it. And I'll stand outside that door and wait to knock and wait and sit in my car and convince myself I don't really need to do this. But inevitably, I sort of know I need to do this. And I just do it. And I hate it. But usually it works out with door knocking.
You've got a podcast that I hope listeners today give it a chance. It's called Two Writers Slinging Yang. You were nice enough to have me on it one time as a guest. That was a lot of fun.
Big mistake. It's been downhill ever since.
It's crash and burn. It's like, oh my God, my career's over. You had as a guest Jimmy Kimmel. It was a great episode. How did you get Jimmy Kimmel?
I got Jimmy Kimmel. Because Jimmy Kimmel co-produced a 30 for 30 series on the 86 Mets.
Okay.
They interviewed me a lot for it. And I don't remember if someone gave me his info or whatever, but I reached out to him and just thanked him. And then we were talking about the Mets. And I told him I'd do this podcast. And he said, sure. And that was it. Very nice guy.
As someone who's followed your work for forever, I've seen you sort of evolve. And this is, again, it's all on social media. So I understand you got to take it with a grain of salt. But I've done sports now for a long time. Are you still a sports fan, Jeff?
I mean, I do enjoy the NBA still. And I always tell my wife and kids, I'm like, this year I'm 100% in the NBA. And I'm not 100%, but I do enjoy it. I'm not I don't know, actually. It's kind of funny because I always tell myself I'm not. But then like the Russell Wilson trade, just as an example, it actually really fascinated me. And I'm always like, oh, well, who'd they get? And what are the picks? And is this a good trade? And can Drew Lock be a good quarterback in Denver? I mean, in Seattle? So I sit down and watch very little sports these days. Very little. Like on an average week, I would say I probably watch about 12 minutes of sports. But I still love the transactions, and I still love the sort of the what ifs and the questions and stuff like that. That's my dog and stuff like that. But I'm not a day-to-day sports fan like I was as a kid. Not at all.
Who is your favorite person to interview? I know that's a hard one.
Like ever?
Yeah. Somebody like, oh man, I love talking to this guy. He was the best.
One of the guys I really liked just died, and he was Gerald Williams, who played for the Yankees and the Braves.
Oh, I saw you mention that. You guys were buddies?
I can't say we were buddies, but he was incredibly nice to me. And when I was a young, nervous sports writer, he was like, he would always be like, Mr. Pearlman. He was the first athlete who knew my name. And actually that goes a long way when you're nervous and someone's like, hey,
deal.
Yeah. And it's not like he was a great quote. He actually wasn't a great quote, but he was so ridiculously kind to me. And he always was. Another guy I actually really like, I always liked Ken Griffey Jr. I know a lot of people didn't. I always found him kind of enjoyable and smart. And I remember I did a story once years ago. He had a teammate on the Cincinnati Reds, a pitcher named Joe Valentine, who was raised by gay parents. And this is more than a decade ago. So that was still kind of a touchy topic.
Yeah.
And it was actually funny. I was writing, I wasn't writing for SI at the time. I was writing for Newsday. I had taken a break from sports, but I wanted to go to spring training. So I asked my bosses, could I find some Long Island people to write about? And they said, sure. And there was this guy, Joe Valentine from Long Island in New York. And I went up to him and I was like, I was interviewing him just about being from Long Island. And I was like, what are your parents' names? And he said, I think he said like Doris and Doreen. And I was like, whoa, were you raised by gay parents? And he's like, yeah. So I do this whole story on him. And then I decide I'm going to interview people about it. And I remember the Washington Nationals PR person at the time, no longer, asked me not to talk to players about it. Like, don't talk to players about it. And I remember they had a pitcher who was like, I just don't understand why people have to be that way. So, it's still kind of a weird time. And I went up to Junior and I said, I'm doing this story about Joe Valentine and kind of about gays and blah, blah, blah. He goes, my best friend is gay. And I was like, what? He goes, yeah, man, my best friend is gay. He goes, I wouldn't, a gay teammate, what would I care? I don't care at all, man. I'd be happy to have a gay teammate. And it was at a time period where saying that actually felt really bold and brash. And a lot of guys wouldn't have said that. And I always just kind of like that about him. He actually was he was an open-minded guy in a sport that oftentimes isn't open-minded. That's a long-winded answer of saying I kind of enjoy Ken Griffey Jr.
I enjoyed Griffey Jr. The one time I talked to him at length. I really liked him. He was with the Reds and he had a rough year, but for some reason he was great to me that day. You'll be good with this one. Who's the biggest asshole you've ever had to deal with?
Oh, there's a holy trinity. It's obviously John Rocker is very high on the list.
Of course.
But then Will Clark is awful.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, you guys had him around there. He's awful.
He's such a jerk.
Just a jerk. And then Barry Bonds was awful. That guy went out of his way to make people. I would say, like, you should never go out of your way to make someone's life worse. In fact, you should go out of your way to make people's lives better.
Yep.
I always like someone, I'm always a guy when I'm checking out of a hotel. This is a small, stupid thing. I always throw the soap out of the shower. Like, I don't leave the soap in the shower for the cleaning person to have to put their hand in, grab the soap, throw it out. I always think I'm just going to throw out the soap so they don't have to do it. And I always think, like, you just want to make someone's life easier. And Barry Bonds went out of his way to make lives harder. He just did. He worked at it. He always made lives harder. Everyone around him was inconvenienced by him being there. And I just think, what a freaking stupid legacy to have. I look back at my time as a baseball writer, and I'm kind of embarrassed by how sheepish I was. Like, why am I letting these people treat me like crap? Like Barry Bonds is no more valuable than you or I. Like, wow, you can hit a baseball, you can hit a round object with a bat, and that gives you the right to, like, treat us like crap. I always look back and think, I wish I had more, to get back to the Jewish theme, chutzpah, back then when I was a writer, than I just think it's kind of pathetic. You do have to go through it, but it's so pathetic how we were all tiptoeing around that guy. We're smarter than that guy. Why am I tiptoeing around you because you make a lot of money and you can hit a ball with a bat? That's utterly ridiculous.
And my big thing now is, like, just be a pro. You don't need to sit here and entertain me. Just be professional and be respectful. I'll be respectful of you. You be respectful of me, and we can go home.
Just be a nice human being. Just be a nice person. Why would you want to do this? I look back at that era when I was covering baseball, and I'm just like, again, I'm really ashamed that I allowed these people to, like, just walk all over me and be like, I remember my friend John Wertheim, I wrote at SI with him, and he one time told me he went to do a profile of Jason Worth when he was with the Phillies, and he was a pain in the ass too. And
Jason fucking Worth. We're not even talking about Barry Bonds, Jeff.
Yeah.
We're talking about Jason Worth.
I know, but there was such a sense of entitlement back then in baseball. And he went up to Jason Worth and he was like, hey, can I ask you a question? And Worth goes, sure, yes. And just walks by him, like just messing with him for the sake of messing with him. And like, I just like, in hindsight, if I could look back, I look back and I think I should have just always spoke like, why are you being an asshole to me? Like, why are you doing this? You know, I just have a job to do, right? Like, I want to go home too. Like all those times I spent standing in a clubhouse waiting for guys who knew I was there and they were doing this stupid cat and mouse game with me. Like, why did I allow that to happen? I don't know.
I did it too. And, you know, you did it on a much bigger platform in New York than I did, but I know that feeling of why did I do this? I'm leaving. I'll do that now, but you didn't, there's no way if you had done that then, Jeff, your colleagues would have probably looked down on you. Don't you think? If you had just said, screw this, I'm leaving. I'm not doing this.
Well, I mean, inevitably, the problem is you need articles and you need content.
Right.
When I was like, I would say maybe 6 years ago, I was writing a story for Bleacher Report. I pitched a story about Jimmer Fredette, and he was playing for the New Orleans Pelicans at the time. And the Pelicans PR guy said, I was living in Southern California, and the Pelicans PR guy said, well, we can get you Jimmer at the team hotel. We're coming into town, we're flying in, and then Jimmer will have some time in the team lobby, in the lobby of the hotel. So that'll be great. You want to do that? And I said, great. And he said, all right, we'll meet you at the hotel. Just text me when you're there, blah, blah, blah. So he tells me they're coming, and I text him, and the bus is arriving, and the PR guy texts me back, and he said, Jimmer can give you 10 minutes. And I was like, well, I need more than 10 minutes. And he's like, that's all Jimmer can give you. And I wrote him back, and I said, yeah, I'm not going to do this story. Don't worry about it. And he was like, what? And I was like, I'm not doing this story. I'm not taking 10 minutes with Jimmer Fredette. And it was just this moment for me that I freaking will always love, because it's like, I'm older than Jimmer Fredette. Right. I'm no less important than Jimmer Fredette in the world. And I don't mean like, cause I'm any big deal. No one is less important. Like no one is more or less important than anyone else. Right. Like I'm not at this age, 40 something years old. I'm not begging for 10 minutes with Jimmer Fredette. I'm just not doing it anymore if I can avoid this. And like, it was a very liberating moment for me in my career where I was like, I'll take a lot of shit, but I'm not fucking waiting here for Jimmer Fredette for 10 minutes. I'm leaving. I'm not doing this story. Bleacher Report can give me another story. And I told them what happened, and they were like, fine. They were like, just don't do the story. So I didn't do it.
Speaking of stories that you've written, I want to give a shout out to this. So people who are listening, go find it on the internet. Google search Jeff Pearlman, Tupac.
Oh, funny.
That was awesome.
Oh, thank you.
No, that was so great. How, like, first of all, what gave you the idea? Because sometimes the beauty of the story is just the idea. It's just, I mean, it's such a great idea. This high school team bumping into Tupac outside Las Vegas. This is how good it was. I still remember certain parts of that story, and I haven't read it in years. And I'm not even a Tupac fan. I couldn't pick out one of his songs, but I certainly know the myth. What gave you the idea, Jeff, to sit there and say, ooh, that's a story, a high school team that bumps into Tupac not long before he gets shot and killed?
All right, it's actually funny, and there was a lesson in this one. So thank you for the kind words, by the way. So years ago, some reporter for a newspaper out here somewhere in the West Coast tweeted out, one day I need to do a story about the time Tupac ran into the Long Beach Poly football team at a rest stop in Barstow. And I think one of my editors at Bleacher Report saw that. And it had been tweeted out like 2 or 3 years earlier by a journalist. And he's like, he knew I liked Tupac. I love Tupac. And the editor was like, do you want to try to do this story? And I was like, yeah. And I actually reached out to the guy who tweeted it at some point, and I was like, just so you know, I've been assigned to do this story. And the guy was fine with it. He was kind of gentlemanly about it. So I just, like, some other reporter put it out there, and I just dug into it. I love Tupac. I ended up tracking down a lot of the former football players at Long Beach Poly when it happened. I tracked down people who sort of traveled with Tupac, and I just pieced together this kind of almost like hip hop football mystery story about this moment in time. And it was right before Tupac wound up getting shot in Vegas a couple of days before, or was it that day? He got shot in Vegas.
I think it was that day. He died that night.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a couple more questions. I love to do this. This is one of my favorite things that I've read in popular media, which is people who steal the Proust questionnaire. So I'm going to pick a couple of these. and you're going to have fun with it. Which living person do you most despise?
Oh, Donald Trump.
There we go. It's kind of a layup. Which words or phrases do you most overuse?
I use blah 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 all the time on my podcast. Every time I listen, I think, oh my God, why do I do that so much? I use that blah 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 all the time.
What's your most treasured possession? It can't be a son, daughter, or your dog, or your wife. It's got to be like a tangible item.
I've kept diaries since 1996, so I have like 25 diaries in my closet. So probably those.
This isn't on the questionnaire, but I was going to ask you anyways because you're a smart guy, and I like asking guys this question. What's your favorite non-sports books? Like, what are your favorite non-sports books? Just so I can add them to the list of books that I might read.
Well, number one all time is the autobiography of Malcolm X, which is one of my favorite. And that was I've used that a lot recently. I've been pretty amped up about the especially where I'm from. There's this real effort to ban books. Books that, and it's always like, we don't indoctrination. And my argument is, when I was in high school, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and I never joined the Nation of Islam. Like, just because you have people read about different cultures, different religions, genders, sexualities, blah, 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 blah. That's not indoctrination. Like, it's exposure. There's a huge difference between the two. And I always use Malcolm X as the classic example. Like, nowadays, these parents would want to ban the autobiography of Malcolm X because our kids, our precious ears, can't read about the Nation of Islam and, blah, blah, blah. So, see, I just did blah, blah, blah.
I know.
So that's a huge, I love the Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien, Vietnam book. So those are two.
Who is your favorite hero of fiction?
Oh, the cable guy. The cable guy. I freaking love the cable guy.
Okay, your book on Bo Jackson comes out in October, and some authors are kind of weird about this, but you want to tell me what your book is going to be after Bo Jackson?
I'm trying to do a Tupac proposal as my next book.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I don't know. I know you don't know much about Tupac, so now's your chance. Maybe if I get the opportunity.
Well, I'll tell you this. There's a good chance. I know sometimes you will put out Twitter alerts and things like that, hey, if you know anybody who played against Bo Jackson, I've given you some phone numbers, and then you've given me some phone numbers. I'm just going to tell you in advance. If you say, hey, if you know anybody who knows Tupac, I'm probably not going to be able to come through with a number on that.
That's okay.
One. Yeah.
That's okay. You weren't first on my list to ask on that one.
Second.
Yeah, so we're good.
I've kept you way too long, but you are, you're a hero of mine. And
oh my God,
no, I mean,
stop
you
it.
are. No,
stop.
you really are. I admire the hell out of you from afar, and to get to know you a little bit and all that has been a great professional.
You're way overrating me.
I'm really not. I am.
I'm just going to puncture this right now by telling you, during this interview, I was for a short span, I was picking up my dog's shit in the yard. So just if you think now that I'm all Hollywood and I'm wearing sunglasses and I'm sitting on a hammock, I assure you I am not.
Well, I can't wait to see your next book turned into a movie. He is the great Jeff Pearlman. You can find all of his work online. He's a big fan of the Republican Party, especially and President Trump, who's going to win the election, I guess, because he never lost. Jeff, I really appreciate this. Thank you very much, and I'm so happy for our success.
Well, thanks, Mac. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a good one. Thanks, Jeff.
All right. I'll see you.
Take care. Thanks. The reason why sports is so big today is because of the period of time Jeff Pearlman has so wisely tapped into, the 1980s, because that's when the marriage between television and sports really created what has become a billion-dollar economy that will never die because we are addicted to it. Oh, and gambling. Now, you may have noticed at the top of this episode the music behind my intro. That's the music CBS used for its telecast of the NBA when the league exploded thanks to Magic, Bird, and Jordan. So I am using this global platform to lobby sports TV producers and creators to return to that classic TV sports introduction made so famous in the 80s. These were about 90 seconds or so of the play-by-play announcer or the host reading a script featuring the storylines of the upcoming game. They sounded like movie trailers. So it was guys like Pat Summerall, Brent Musburger, Vince Scully, Dick Stockton, Bob Costas, Marv Albert, and others whose presence meant that you were watching something dramatic.
It was a well-directed Lakers attack that captured the first two games of the NBA Finals. Los Angeles was impressive with their passing and relentless with their running as they overwhelmed a hobbled Celtics team. It was obvious the defending champions were vulnerable, and there were whispers of a sweep. But Boston had other ideas, and they became apparent in Game 3. The unstoppable Laker fast break suddenly ran into roadblocks as the Celtics played with renewed intensity. The heroes included the probable and the great Larry Bird, and the improbable and reserve center Greg Kite, whose tireless labor in the trenches helped spark their victory. Boston's message was clear, and the Lakers took notice. This series is far from over.
Now, I'll admit, I can watch these clips all day, and I might have done that because I can remember watching all of them, and it's so much fun. It's nostalgia, because even if the game was a total dog, there was something about Pat Summerall's voice narrating the storylines for Giants-Eagles. Now, I know sports is like anything else. It constantly evolves, and the people involved are looking for new ways to do things, and sports TV is a vital part of that evolution. But it would be fun if a producer or a creator somewhere thought, let's go back to 1985 and bring back the classic sports TV introduction that helped make all of this just so damn big.